Hello, my name is Father Gregory Pine, and I am a Dominican friar of the province of St. Joseph, and this is Pints with Aquinas. So I've been thinking recently about mysticism, or the mystical life, and what that means when we describe it in Christian conversations. Part of this, the inspiration for this, comes from a lecture that I listened to recently by Father Bernhard Blankenhorn. So he's a Dominican friar of the province of the Holy Name of Jesus. He teaches here at the University of Freiburg. But I listened to this lecture on the Thomistic Institute podcast, so you can search Aquinas as a mystical theologian. And he was describing what we need to understand about the human person and what we need to understand about thought and what we need to understand about God in order for all of this to hold together. And I was very impressed by that. And then also, I recently read through the Introduction to the Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales, more on that, and the way in which he describes the ordinary mysticism of the Christian, I also found to be super fruitful. So, I'm going to propose to you a, quote, method for mysticism. So let's get after it. So I think when we approach the question of mysticism, we're tempted in a variety of ways. On the one hand, we think, that's just for the great saints, the St. Teresa of Avila's or the St. John of the Crosses of the world, and I will never experience anything that can be described as the mystical life. I need to content myself with the scraps from the table. On the other hand, we can sometimes make it overly obscure and mysterious, like I can't even know what mysticism is, or I, as a thinking person, can't even enter consciously into that experience, something that just kind of washes over you and takes control of you, and then you kind of just get dropped out on the other side, completely bewildered or bemused by the experience. So I want to push back against either of those two temptations to say, no, the mystical life is for all Christians, and two, not that it's something comprehensible, as in we can wrap our minds around it and exhaust it of all its understandability, but in the sense that we can understand some of it, or there are parts of it that can be understood. So when we're talking about this, we can talk about different methods for praying. And when we say methods for praying, again here, confront some obstacles or confront some temptations. When we talk about methods, usually people are thinking if I just do this, then I will have a successful prayer life. Or, this person prescribes this method, so on the basis of their authority, I'm just going to make it my own because why not? Well, I don't know so much about either of those instincts. We might want to soften those instincts a little bit and say simply okay, so it's good to be disciplined in your approach to prayer, but it's not to make prayer a series of 19 and a half steps through which we need to progress if we're going to hope to realize anything successful. Because prayer is ultimately God's work in us. He's going to bring it about as He sees fit. We can be better or worse when it comes to disposing ourselves to that and cooperating with the graces that He does give, but we're never going to make it into a system that can just be prosecuted from step 1 through step 19 and a half. I don't know why I'm clinging to that particular number, but whatever. And then on the other hand, there are a variety of options in the church, and these are proposed to us as objective goods, but we also need to appropriate them. We need to make them our own. So you've got different methods for prayer, and I think it's fine to try them out and see what works and not be overly troubled if something doesn't work, because you can just set it aside. That's okay. You can't set the Mass aside, for instance, but you can set aside a certain method of prayer prescribed by a saint in the Church's tradition. All right? So whenever we approach these questions, I think it's helpful to say at the outset, we're not in pursuit of particular phenomena. We're not looking to bilocate or levitate as end goals of our method of mysticism. Rather, we're seeking to grow in the life of faith, hope, and charity. And you're oh man, I thought this was going to be more exotic. Sorry to disappoint you, but it's the theological virtues all the way down. So faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. Hope is a kind of confidence that the omnipotent and merciful God will make good on His promises, and charity is the love that abides among friends, specifically between our divine friend and those with whom He shares His interior life. So we're seeking to cultivate these theological virtues, which have God for their end, so that they can come to characterize our lives through and through to a greater extent. All right? So for those of us, who are starting out a conversion or progressing in our conversion, we want to safeguard this life of the theological virtues and encourage this life of the theological virtues through prayer, through meditation, through acts of penance, through study, etc. Right? So there are many ways in which we go about it, and this life of prayer, this method of mysticism, is one of them. So in talking about prayer, there are kind of a variety of dimensions to it, but I think we can simply say, at the outset, there are interior dimensions and exterior dimensions. Start with the exterior dimensions. So you can kind of control your environment. All right, so you want to pray. I always say pray in the morning because your mind hasn't yet heated up and all of the distractions and dispersions of the day haven't fully washed upon the shore of your mind. So it's just a great time to dedicate your life yourself to God and to seek to start off the day recollectedly. That's an adverbial form of the word recollected. Cheers to you. So that can, spill over into the rest of your day. You can also control the environment, like your posture. Some people prefer to kneel, some people prefer to sit. It's rare, but some people prefer to stand. You have to find a place in which you can be sufficiently at ease to concentrate, but not too terribly comfortable that you fall asleep. You also want to distance yourself from things that are distracting, like your phone or your computer or beeping sounds or flashing lights, etc. And it's great if you can do it in a sacred space. Ideally, you do it in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. If you make 30 minutes of meditation in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, that's an indulgenced act, okay? But if you can't, or if it's not practicable for you to do that, then you want to, carve out a little sacred space wherever it is that you live, right? In your apartment, in your house. So maybe a little corner where you have maybe a kneeler, sacred images, your Bible, your rosary, maybe a candle, something like that. All right. And then those postures and those preparations help you to cultivate the inner dimensions of prayer. And what is the inner dimension of prayer? Where it's the raising of your mind and heart to God. Or it's the simple gaze of the soul upon the God by whom she knows herself to be loved, says St. Teresa of Avila. All right. So you're seeking to gaze upon God who gazes on us night and day without ceasing. This question of prayer is a big question for St. Francis de Sales. It's a big question, obviously, for everyone in the Christian tradition. So you have a variety of methods that are proposed, which I alluded to. Like many people are familiar with the Ignatian method of prayer, which is image-driven, right? So you image yourself or you imagine yourself in a particular gospel scene, and then you interact with the different dramatis personae, and you kind of interiorize that experience by playing it out, by living it out. Or there's like Lectio Divina, which is a way of reading sacred scripture, which is very much word-driven. So you read the words, you meditate on the words, certain words leap out to you, you ask God about those words, you pray with God about those words, and then God kind of opens your mind, as it were, to a more perfect or simple reflection on his interior life through the mediation of those words. I'm thinking especially right now about St. Francis de Sales and his method of prayer, because like I said at the outset, I just recorded a podcast with Father Jacob Bertrand Jancic for Ascension, which is called Catholic Classics. So we read the book. So the first half of each episode is us reading through the book, and we read through the entirety of the book. And there are parts of it that have never been brought out in a translation. So it's the entire book, which is cool. And then we have some commentary in the latter half of each episode. If you're interested in following that podcast, it's called Catholic Classics. You can find it on any podcast app. And then to get a reading plan, which helps you to go day by day over the course of 43 days of like 25-minute episodes, you can go to ascensionpress.com/Catholic Classics, or you can text 33777 to get the reading plan. Boom. All right, so in that, he describes different steps through which you progress as you kind of gear up for, indulge in, and then kind of transition out of a time of prayer. St. Francis will have you meditate on a variety of themes, but he's very much thought-driven or concept-driven. Whereas like Ignatius is more image-driven, I would say, and then Lectio Divina is more word-driven. Here we have a type of prayer that's more thought-driven, doctrine-driven, concept-driven, however you want to describe it. So he has you meditate on God, and then all things in light of God is the basic idea. So a lot on God, creation, hell, heaven, sin and its import, things like that. And this is all mapped out in Book 1 of the Introduction to the Devout Life, which is divided into 5 books. But Book 1 treats this at length. So the first steps for St. Francis de Sales are to place yourself in God's holy presence, all right? Which will often mean closing your eyes, right? Or taking a deep breath, or making a conscious act so as to distance yourself from the ambient world, right? And its noise and its distractions and dispersions. And then call upon the name of Jesus, right? Or call upon the most blessed Trinity and place yourself in the presence thereof, right? And ask God to be present to you and ask that he inspire you, right? So you ask God for an increase in faith, hope, and charity. You ask him to give you lights and insights so as to bless this time of prayer. Then the second step is St. Francis has you work through a series of like devotional and doctrinal considerations. So say the particular topic is creation. He'll say, consider the fact that it could not have been. All right, so God doesn't need creation. It's not that he creates because he experiences some boredom or lack or need. No, God creates because he's good. So he's like, okay, meditate on that fact that something is which needn't have been, right? We are when we could not have been. He finishes his sentence. So we'll say, like, pause for a second. Consider the import of that you're a contingent being, which is to say you're not necessary, and yet you are, which means that someone chose you, right? Someone loved you into existence. That someone is God. And so he prepares maybe 3 or 4 different points about each doctrine. And you can do this with the creed, right? You can just say, start with, I believe in, and then consider that, all right? So all things visible and invisible. How often do I think about the fact that there are invisible things? How often do I think about my guardian angel? How often do I think about God? Right? So you can just ask yourself these questions as they leap off the page of whatever creedal statement or sacred scripture or things like that. All right? So you work through these devotional and doctrinal considerations. And then he says, on the basis of these inquiries, on the basis of this investigation, our minds are illumined and our hearts are emboldened, and we're kind of impelled to make what he calls like resolutions, or what's sometimes in the tradition called affections. So what we're doing here is not saying like, oh man, God is awesome, I'm going to try harder to like live this awesomeness. No. So as God enlightens you about something and convicts you about something, then you like let that kind of come to the surface. You formulate a resolution or affection which reflects your deepened understanding and your kind of matured love. So that way it can come together, it can kind of coalesce around something more concrete. So an idea would be like, okay, we're thinking about creation. The fact that you could not have been, okay, an easy resolution or a kind of straightforward resolution to make is one of gratitude. How often do I thank God? All right, so I dedicate time to prayer, maybe a holy hour each day, but I don't really dedicate much at all to thanksgiving, which I think makes me cynical and sarcastic and ironic and unappreciative and kind of a grumpus. So I should incorporate more gratitude in my life. So I'm just going to write myself a simple little note on the top of my prayer intention list that just says, thank God for 3 things. All right. And this is borne out by positive psychology. Positive psychologists find that when you focus not so much on pathology, but more on happiness, adjusting for happiness, and you make this move in the direction of gratitude, it actually has serious psychological effects. Well, we're not just trying to be psychologically well adjusted. We're trying to be sacrificial offerings to the Most High God. And one way in which to do so is to recognize what He has given us so that we can render it back in return. So it's just like a simple thing like, Lord, help me to grow in gratitude. And I want to concretely realize this in the context of my holy hour by thanking you for things, not just vague things or rattling off the same list of 3 things every day, but to think concentratedly about the last day, the upcoming day, what I'm looking forward to, what you have blessed me with, what was unforeseen but delightful in turn, what I was surprised at, like what I was surprised by or made joyful by. I can't speak. Made joyful by in a way that I didn't anticipate. Amen, hallelujah. Okay, so these would be resolutions or affections. So we're not trying to try harder here, but we're trying to engage the will, kind of fix the heart on something concrete as it comes to the surface in the context of prayer. And then the last step, the 4th step, is to thank God, whoa, and then to offer God our affections and resolutions, to offer them to Him as a pleasing sacrifice and ask Him to correct them if they're off base or not on point. And then basically petition God for the grace to see it through. Apart from your grace, I will amount to nothing. What do I have that I have not received? Why do I boast as if it were my own? Crazy town, USA, population 1. All right, so Lord, grant me the grace to see it through if it is in fact your will. And then he says, gather together a small bouquet of devotion at the end of your prayer. So pick out little things from prayer that you want to remember, that you want to bring with you throughout the course of the day. And he likens them to like a little bunch of flowers, right? Like a little nosegay, I think is the word that is often used in older translations. So in short, place yourself in God's presence and ask Him to inspire you. Work through devotional and doctrinal considerations, right? On the basis of those, formulate different resolutions or affections, right? Which is to engage the will or motivate the will in response to the way in which you've been enlightened, illumined, emboldened. And then finally, thank God, ask Him for what you need in order to see it through, and then gather together some gems from the past time spent in prayer so that you can gaze on them, so that you can reflect on them in the minutes, hours, days that follow. So if you are interested in this type of prayer, it's described at great length in the Introduction to the Devout Life. And like I said, we just recorded a new podcast that reads through this book and comments on it, and it's called Catholic Classics. We'll have a different spiritual classic probably Well, we might have 2 or 3 seasons a year, something like that. So you can look forward to further seasons coming out from Ascension on that podcast. And then if you want the reading plan, it's at ascensionpress.com/Catholic Classics, or you can text 33777. Text intro to 33777. You'll get the reading plan. So boom, that's what I had hoped to share. This is Pints with Aquinas. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel, push the bell, and get emails when other videos come out. Also, if you haven't yet, do check out Godsplaining. I mentioned Father Jacob Bertrand Jancic, Catholic Classics, but he also contributes to Godsplaining with me, and there are 3 other friars who contribute to it as well. So you can check out our weekly episodes, guest episodes, Lectio Divina episodes, live stream episodes. Today's just a tough day for me speech-wise. Lord, grant me the grace to speak well. Amen. So check out Godsplaining if you haven't yet on YouTube or on your podcast app. And then I wrote a book. It's called Prudence, Choose Confidently, Live Boldly. I hope that it is helpful to you, that it's of service not only your prayer life, but your human life whole and entire. And you can find that wherever books are sold. So Amazon.com or at osv.com or wherever else. Who knows? Okay, that's all I got for you. My prayers are for you. Please pray for me. I look forward to chatting with you next time on Pints with Aquinas.